Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. Thank you for joining our session today. This is the second in a series with both ZPro Solutions and Sharptree. And our series, of course, is referred to as Maximo Straight Talk, where we get down to the brass tacks of the solution and the topic that we're looking at within the given session. Our first session was on Maximo Application Suite, and we are now posting more about that particular session on the Sharptree blog. So if you haven't checked that out, please do, just to squeeze in a shameless plug there. But today's topic is asset data collection. And again, our goal is to get down to the brass tacks and really talk about not only why asset data collection is important to your organization, but the tools and techniques to pull efficient data. Just from an agenda standpoint, let me go ahead and move the screen forward. We do intend to cover off introductions so that you're aware of all the hosts that are available here today. Everybody that we discuss as being party to the session will also be available for the Q&A at the end. But along the way, we're going to talk about reasons to collect asset data, what data you should be collecting, and then, of course, considerations for managing data collection efforts, along with what it really means to have good existing prior data. Do you need to do some data cleansing first, establishing and maintaining a proper asset hierarchy, as well as data review and approval processes. But of course, one of the main things that we wanted to make sure we covered today is collection tools. Are you using things like Esri Collector, Maximo Anywhere, or another strong candidate that you could be using is Opco from Sharptree. So more about that coming up. But let me go ahead now and turn this over to our host today, Jim Ferns. And Jim, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. Can you flip to the introductions? So our presenters today, myself, Jim Ferns. I have been in the EAM world for longer than I care to admit. I have 20 years of experience delivering Maximo mostly for consulting firms, but I've worked in many industries, federal, S&L, manufacturing, transportation. Brian Furness is a principal management consultant with ZPro. Again, significant experience in EAM across industries. Bob, who's spoken, 25 years of experience at delivering EAM solutions to clients. Again, across multiple industries. Not only IT, but strategy and strategy, data, engagements, that kind of thing. Jason Van Usen. Jason is the founder and CEO of Sharptree. Jason has started with actually working for MRO when they were still called MRO. They were actually called PSDI when you started, right, Jason? That takes him back, and has been working since then in the EAM space, but over the last 12 years or so, focused on delivering mobile applications, superior mobile applications to the industry. Bob, you want to flip? And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to walk through the first topics of the day.
And while you do that, and Brian's getting ready to talk about those topics, just one quick comment housekeeping-wise. If you do have questions during the session, please feel free to place those into the chat window. As we move to the Q&A at the end, we will make sure that all questions are covered, possibly being able to open up microphones so that you can ask your question yourself. Thank you. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jim. We have a great demonstration of mobile asset data collection to show you today. Before we get to that, I'm going to talk about the why and what. Why collect asset data? What data do we need to collect? And what is the value of asset data? To answer the why question, clarify your purpose. Begin with the end in mind. The bottom line here is that great asset data enables you to make better informed decisions, answer critical questions, and carry out key activities. Mark Twain once said famously, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And when you know your why, when you know why you do what you do, even the toughest days become easier. So I have little kids, they ask me why all the time. But it's great now. We understand the purpose of asset data collection. Why on any given day am I collecting asset data? It may be to capture new assets or incorporate data from new facilities and infrastructure, or enhance asset data on existing infrastructure, or capture and enhance maintenance data on existing assets. Or it could be managing your inventory, your stock, your fast movers, your audits, your cycle counts. All pretty straightforward, should be familiar territory to a lot of us. Next slide. Asset data has value. It can vary across functional areas and stakeholders. What is the value of collecting asset data for designers, builders, operators, maintainers, and other stakeholders? You might think of these four pillars as representing the asset life cycle. Another way to think about this is in terms of contracts and data requirements and the chain of custody of information. I won't read everything up on the screen, there's a lot there, but knowing what asset information is valuable to you and getting involved early on with data requirements and configuration, identifying and collecting all the information you need is in the long run much cheaper and easier than reverse engineering it later on. Next slide. This is the Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. Tragically, 11 men lost their lives here and many more were injured. It took 87 days to seal the well. Without getting into the details of why and how that happened, we can learn something valuable by focusing on one aspect of this. In responding to the disaster, critical safety equipment failed to work because BP engineers didn't have access to the correct diagrams, and equipment configurations had been altered significantly. It is estimated 210 million gallons of oil was released into the Gulf. Over 8,000 living organisms died, and the result was a $20 billion corporate settlement, the largest in history. So this is really a drop the mic example of the downstream impacts of asset information errors and the value of asset data. Special thank you to Hadi Amal Amin from Bentley Systems for sharing this, and to the Institute of Asset Management for their valuable community engagement. Next. Better management of asset data requires connected pieces of valuable data. An example of this is the practice of asset digital twin, often referenced by other names: construction data models, CAD, building information modeling, digital as-built, etc. Lots of descriptions and conceptions out there, and maybe that's a good topic for another straight talk. I really like this definition of digital twin from Bentley. If you have a better one, a favorite one, please let us know. We welcome your questions and feedback and suggestions for future topics. The key point here is that digital twins evolve over time as they are continually synchronized with new data. Next. What asset data information do we need to collect? What should you collect at each stage of the life cycle? Next. Examples of the data you collect for your asset registry are ID, name, description, model, serial number, classification, location, service status, value, construction date, expected useful life, and ownership. Next. At handover and commissioning, you would collect your inventory and hierarchy, your design drawings and specs, your acquisition costs, your manufacturer, your warranty information, maintenance tasks, recommended intervals and schedules, and asset configuration. Next. For each asset in the operations and maintenance phase, you would collect treatments, all the work steps, the actual work performed, work resources, planned and actual, work costs, faults and defects, current operational availability, performance reliability measures, and asset criticality for maintenance decisions. Next. And now I'll do some handover of my own and hand over to Jim and Jason to talk about managing data collection efforts.
Thank you, Brian. So what we're looking at is how do you manage the data collection effort? And again, kind of harking back to what Brian said, once you know why, you kind of know the how. So why am I doing it? Am I doing it to enhance existing data? Am I doing it to establish and maintain an asset hierarchy? You know, and how am I doing that? Or am I just I received a new facility under my care. I get in there, I realize that their asset data is just either they list every asset and the data is incomplete, or they're just missing assets, or the hierarchy is just not up to par, and I don't know what the downstream or upstream effects of a particular shutting down a particular piece of equipment is. So these are the questions that you need to ask yourself if I'm going through as I go through this exercise. So do you want to verify existing data, or are you simply enhancing an existing data set? So I have existing asset data, you know, how confident am I that that's correct? If I'm not, you know, maybe I, you know, task my folks with, you know, that you have to positively verify that asset still exists, that model number is still there, that it's the correct serial number, etc. Or, you know, I'm confident that machine is out there. I just need to know, you know, some additional specs on it. So what are you collecting? And where I see that being important is you need to specify, hey, I need you to go out and collect data on these assets. Oh, and by the way, if you discover that there's something new out there, somebody put in a brand new cooling fan over here, you know, you might want to collect the data on that as well while you're there. And we're going to demonstrate a couple of when we demonstrate the OPCO asset collection, we're going to demonstrate the ability to focus on an existing data set. Like, here's the data set you need to go out and look at, and here's a specific data set. Oh, and by the way, I've just discovered that this new fan is out here, but I don't have the data set for the fan. So I can use a generic template to collect that data and then, you know, look to enhance it later, or perhaps I don't need to know that much about the fan. I know its make and serial number. I know that it needs to be, you know, lubed every once in a while. So I'm going to just get out there and do what I need to do. And how much current data do you show to the data collection personnel? Do you want them reading it and saying, oh, you know, this is correct, I need to positively check that. Is this correct? I need to positively check that. Or do you want to give them, hey, here's the location, here's the asset, go collect the data and then compare it afterwards? Both are valid reasons. I guess it depends on, you know, do you have subcontractors doing the work, that kind of thing, or are your trusted maintenance personnel who know the assets well, are they out doing it? Asset tagging. This could be, as we mentioned earlier, this could be a topic for another webinar. what are you doing for asset tagging? I just got off a conversation yesterday with a client who's discussing various options for asset tagging. There are, with RFID, not so much in favor these days. I know people still do it, but it has its uses and it has its flaws. We're seeing people with NFCs and testing that stuff out. One of the tried and true methods and kind of where we ended up with the client's conversation yesterday was, durable barcoding. Let's barcode the thing so that we know the guy touched the asset, that he was out there, did what he needed to do, and he's identified the proper asset to work on or to lock out, tag out, or whatever. And is the asset location accurate? We did a project, and this is going to date me, but I did this project quite a while ago. But we had a client who breaks down and reconfigures equipment consistently, so they had to keep this data accurate, so they knew where these $2.5 million tanks were that they were going to break down and move a couple of months from now to do something else. An asset hierarchy. So some people have robust asset hierarchies. They know the upstream and downstream effects of turning off a particular asset. They know, if they have to lock out, tag out something, what specific other assets is that going to affect? If I need to shut down this machine, does this shut down the whole line, or can I let the line run, or do I have a parallel piece of equipment? So how do you get that in there? Do you have an existing, if you're looking at existing assets, perhaps you already have the hierarchy, you just want to enhance the data for the particular assets, or let's get a collection of assets and then let's put the hierarchy in place. So all was a big topic and not something we're going to touch on detail in here. Data review and approval. So, okay, so you sent folks out and maybe you subcontracted the work and you want to make sure that the data is correct. So what is the process for reviewing it? I will say that we're going to demo OPCO again later on in the call, but whatever collection tools you're using, we believe that the most straightforward way to do this is to collect the data, get it into Maximo, and then have the approval process run through Maximo. A lot of folks collect data on spreadsheets. They collect data on forms. Then it's either rekeyed or somebody reviews the spreadsheet. The infamous CSV files full of data. We have worked with efforts like that have become cumbersome. They've worked, but they rely on a lot of man hours to make that work. If you get it in the system early in a pending status, you don't have to deal with that. And I always like this one. And folks ask me, like, what do you want your data to be? And I look at it very simply. It needs to be timely, it needs to be accurate, it needs to be meaningful, and it needs to be complete. So what do I mean by timely? It's up to date. My location, the asset location is where it sits now. And as of September 23rd, I know this asset is in this location. Is it accurate? So do I have the right serial number? Do I have the right model number? Do I have the right work steps against it for a particular component of work? Is it meaningful to me? Am I collecting data that's meaningful to me? Can I use it in the field? Are my field personnel going to look at it, or are they going to say, oh, we have 400 of these machines. I know exactly how to work it. I don't need to know, the particulars for each one of these things. And is it complete? And again, you're collecting asset data so that it's more complete. So you don't want asset data that doesn't tell you anything. It's okay. Well, I have an asset, but I don't know what parts I need for it. I don't know what the work steps are to fix it. I don't know how often I have to go out and service the piece of equipment. So is the data complete or not? And that's how to manage a data collection effort. Just understand why you're doing it, understand how you're going to do it, and then manage it to the results you're looking for. Again, and the results would be meaningful and complete data that you can use in the field, and it can help. And back to the reasons why. you know, it's get the most out of those assets, right? Keep them up and running, you know, produce the most, produce the most product you need to do, get the most use out of those assets. Can we flip to the next slide? We're rushing through this material. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jason. Jason is going to demo OPCO's asset collection capabilities. Again, I'm not going to steal Jason's thunder, but I am going to say OPCO connects to Maximo directly, and when you're collecting the data, you can approve it through the OPCO platform, but the data is in Maximo as soon as you save that record. And with that, Jason, sorry, I'm stealing your thunder here.
Oh, that's good.
I'll let you do it.
All right. Bob,
Let me go ahead and get you queued up, Jason, as the presenter.
All right. Here we go. Okay, so hopefully you are seeing a device.
We do.
Great. So as Jim said, OPCO is a mobile application for Maximo, designed specifically for Maximo. And it really draws on our experience over the last almost 15 years of developing mobile applications for Maximo. Making that easier and simpler to deploy, and really trying to take the burden out of mobility, because mobility provides us the opportunity to fill in a lot of these gaps. We have assets out in the field that we don't really know where they are or what they are, and oftentimes the data is wrong. And as Brian pointed out, not having the correct data can have some pretty disastrous impacts. However, the barrier to entry of that is usually $1 million plus mobile implementations that take months, if not years. So OPCO is designed to literally deploy in minutes. We have a really good video on YouTube showing that process, and then leverage what you have in Maximo to drive your business processes. So in this case, we'll be using the inspection forms from Maximo Work Centers to drive an asset collection. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and log in. So I launch the app, log in. And this is just our standard OPCO work dashboard showing me my work orders that I have, what's urgent, overdue, a total overview of my work, and then my action plan. So I already planned that I'm going to do a data collection, so I can click on that. You can see it's filtered just to my data collection. I can tap on that. And what it's showing me is a work order that was created telling me to go do an inspection. So just to show the context of this, the work order in Maximo is this work order. You'll see it is a work type called Sharptree Asset Collection, which identifies it as an asset collection work order. And you'll see that there are 2 inspections that I've been asked to do, both reciprocating pumps, but one against an asset, one against a location. So I'm going to go ahead and perform this on the device. Here you can see the inspection form, and just to show kind of how that ties together, you can see the inspection form in Maximo with the description, serial number, tag number, a bunch of specifications that are required. Again, this was all just configured in Maximo as an inspection form. So returning to the device, you can see that I've got my activities here. I can see my next activity is the overhead crane 2, or I can tap on, swipe over and see my 2 activities that I've been asked to do. These are those 2 inspections. So tapping on the inspection, you can see it brings up the details that were configured in that form with the description, serial number, tag number, and an attachment. I'm going to start with the attachment just to highlight a feature of OPCO. I have a boilerplate image here that I've taken, so I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of that. And once I have that picture, I can tap text recognition, and you can see it's automatically detected the serial number, the capacity, the speed limit. I can also zoom in on this image and pull, let's say, FlowServe as my description. I can also tap in and just type additional data that I might know about the asset, like its, let's say its type, its pump, and other information. So now I have the picture that was taken of the boilerplate data, so I know where it came from. It's automatically extracted that and made that available here. Oops, if I can go back to details. And now I have the tag number. So this goes to the tagging information that Jim talked about, and being able to, in this case, scan a QR code and apply that as the tag. So I might have a roll of QR codes with me, pre-assigned, that I just take the picture and then stick it on, or it might already have one on it, but it lets me capture this data as I go. I can add additional information, maybe comments and additional pictures if I'm interested. And then once I'm done, I can complete the inspection. And you can see it's now been marked as complete on my list. And if I go back to my dashboard, the application is prompting me for my next one, which is the boiler room. At this point, I notice I have a work log entry, and I can see that the admin has asked me to check for other assets while I'm out there. I'm going to go ahead and reply and say, no problem on it. And that creates a work log on the work order that I was asked to perform. I can now click on here and select an asset collection. And as Jim said, in this case, we have two types of assets to collect, either a centrifugal pump or a reciprocating pump. I'm going to go ahead and just do the reciprocating. And I can create my asset collection on the fly as I go. So, new asset, give it serial number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Other information that I might capture about it. I can again use that tag to identify it. If there are other data available, and I'm going to go ahead and just complete this new inspection that I just did. So what this is doing is creating, again, those inspection forms, filling them out in Maximo so you have an audit trail of the record of the person doing the inspection and capturing that data in a way that's accessible in Maximo. Now, the next step in this process is for somebody to actually review it. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and log out as myself and log in as a supervisor. Who you'll notice, because he's a supervisor, has a different role, has a new tab available down below, where I can see the asset collection that was performed. So when I tap on there, that's my new asset that was collected. I actually want to review the asset that was collected the first time, so I can see the serial number that was extracted, the tag number. I can review as Joe O, as the manager. I can edit this information and say, I know that that's not actually 307, it's actually 308. Make that edit to the inspection form. And at the end, I can perform these actions. Now, these actions are configurable. We have some preset ones for creating a new asset, which will create a new asset from this inspection. I can approve and apply this back to the asset that the collection was done against, in this case, the overhead crane. I can reject it and say, this is just, not right. Send it back to the person to go re-perform that action and say, you must have been looking at the wrong asset. It still needs to be done. Or I can just simply discard it. Just for sake of ease, I'm going to go ahead and click the create a new asset. I'm going to say, I know it was done against this crane, but actually, obviously, it's a pump, so we're going to create a new asset. And you can see it created asset 2116. And if I go back to Maximo, I guess first of all, we can look at the collection and just show how that collection was performed in Maximo. So there's all the data that I collected. Again, now still available. So I've got the whole audit history. And if I look at the asset, I go to the Assets app, go to 2116. You can see it's created that asset with the data that I collected, with my serial number and the asset tag, along with the specifications that were collected, including that edit. So OPCO asset collection ties that all together so that we have both the person in the field, easily collecting the data, and it is also optimized for a tablet. So if you have a lot of data that you need to capture, that's available. The collection can be done by somebody who may or may not know the assets well, but then capture that, keep an audit trail, and approve it by somebody who actually understands and knows the asset, and can ensure that that data is actually correct. Kind of tying that whole life cycle together and making a cohesive and easy process to follow. Again, all while leveraging Maximo and the infrastructure that you have, the capabilities that are already inbuilt in Maximo, without having to bring in, as Jim said, spreadsheets or other data sources or kind of all these other artifacts that you need to manage. Having that all in one place and tying that process together for you. And really easy to implement. Literally, these forms take minutes to put together. And since OPCO works with Maximo right out of the box, there's nothing really to implement or configure. You can be up and running in an hour or so with your custom forms. So again, making that really simple. Jim, anything else?
There was a little discussion earlier, Jason, about there are other tools out there, and I don't want to steal from OPCO, but there's Esri's data collector. There's obviously other, we have competitors in the mobile sphere. I will say that Esri's data collector is a tool that's out there, and people use it because they're using Esri, and it's it kind of comes with the package. The Registry collects data for different reasons. I mean, obviously, it's a very specific location. Depending on the layers and the complexity you have, it might have, if it's a buried asset, how deep it is, or the exact location to the, to within a few feet. But you're going to need that asset data in Maximo at some point. So, we're of the opinion that Esri and Maximo should talk to one another. And either if you collect the data either in Maximo and then feed it over to Esri, or the other way around, the data should be synced between those two systems. And so that's, and then the other applications, they collect the data, they put it into Maximo, but then you would have the reverse problem, right? And OPCO, right? You put it into Maximo, you need it in Esri, it needs to feed across to Esri. So we see that as the architecture, just high level, is an interface between the two that syncs data on a real-time basis, so that the stuff is current.
And I'll add to what you're saying there as far as the Esri data collector. It is a good tool. It doesn't necessarily tie into Maximo, and you do have the challenge of how do you get that data into Maximo. You might already have interfaces, and that does work. But again, I think your point there, Jim, about why are you collecting this data is really important, and the focuses are kind of different between those two.
Jason, I want to clarify one of the points that you made, because as you're collecting the data through OPCO, obviously that data, as it's collected, is being stored somewhere, and you showed an approval process. So as it's approved, it becomes a true asset in Maximo. Where's that data residing in the interim? Is it residing on the device? Is it residing in an outside database, or is it just kind of sitting in Maximo in limbo until it's approved by the supervisor?
So it is, well, it is on the device, and I should also point out Opco does work offline. So, you know, there is obviously a local data store that it's storing that on. But as far as the repository where that is stored long-term is on an inspection form in Maximo. So again, using just the standard inspection forms that come with Maximo in their work center, you can see this is actually the collected data stored in Maximo, and you have that historical record. So it is there forever. The actions that we are applying, where you saw me actually take that and make an asset out of that, is an automation script that is tied to this inspection form. So it is all standard Maximo components. We're just leveraging them in kind of a unique way to support this process.
Okay, great. And Brian, I want to bring you back into the conversation because naturally, you know, the whole purpose of collecting asset data, you know, it's going to lead into reporting, whether that be for regulated reporting, for transit asset management plans, strategic plans. So based on what you've seen with the type of data that, you know, Opco can collect or any other tool can collect, do you think this hits the mark? Do you think it's, you know, meets the need?
Yes. Yes, there are, you know, too many situations where parts are cannibalized from one to another to repair a condition or to make service, or and having that data collected by boots on the ground and being able to geotag and take photos. And we saw how easily the app recognized the manufacturer plate. Well, I think a lot of people are familiar with 311 type apps where you might see a defective asset, take a picture, and create a service request. Well, this hits the mark there too. And I think when you're able to walk through a facility, if you're on a scheduled inspection or work order and you notice a water condition, or you notice a stairway railing defective, or another safety concern, the fact that you can leverage that device is really a value and a streamline versus going back and translating and transcribing, and so it really it's great.
Good. And Jason, a question that that we've seen is, you know, you showed the, you know, how this asset data collection is tied to an inspection, and therefore, you know, the role of doing the asset collecting, the data collection can be essentially assigned to a technician. But you know, you also have that ad hoc need. The technician may be in the field working on another piece of equipment, sees something, and wants to be able to collect information on the fly. So can a technician initiate, you know, this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the second part, where as a technician in the field, I came in. I should look at one of these work orders. Not sure if I have one handy, but I can click on this and either add an inspection, or if I'm on an asset collection, I can add a new asset collection on the fly, just as a technician. So that second one was more the ad hoc of I walk out to a space, you know, and it might be actually even directed ad hoc. Please go to this room. We have no idea what's there. And yeah, if you see something, please create a new inspection. So that was where we have the ability to specify, well, there's one. So that's where we have the ability to add an asset collection and show them the forms that we have available. So in this case, I've got just the two, but I can set up specific forms that are tailored to the type of information I want for a given asset. You find a fan, you know, then we have a form for that. Or if you find a pump, here's the things that we expect. And that really allows for the the technician in the field to have some agency and capture whatever information they happen to find out there. Yeah, and have that freedom.
Perfect.
So both directed and non-directed work.
Yeah, fully understood. And Jim, with your years of experience, I'm sure you've come across the need for that ad hoc data collection, correct?
Oops. Jim, you are muted.
And I'm talking to the mute button, so I look. We have actually used this to just collect data around assets for government entities that have reporting requirements. Hey, the state has issued you 5 vehicles. We need you to go out periodically and inspect those vehicles, make sure you still have them, where are they located, and report back. Here's the state issued equipment. We inspected it on this day. Here's the we identified it by serial number, barcode, whatever, and here's the condition we found it in. So Jason mentioned they're using inspections. OPCO uses inspection forms for 2 reasons. One is to actually physically, you already know all you need to know about the asset, but we can translate an inspection form into I have to go out and inspect this asset once in a while, or you can use it for asset discovery. So what it does is it provides the form to collect the data set you want for the assets you're trying to locate and collect data on. So.
Okay. And Jason, you're still sharing your screen. One of the questions that came in went back to your ability to read that vendor tag and the FlowServe type tag that you had. The question is that a capability for it to capture data from that vendor tag? Is that something that has to be pre-configured, or is that something that was essentially able to work on the fly?
So the text recognition is able to work on the fly. It'll automatically capture that. And I showed how you can drag and drop. So you can drag and drop any field that it recognizes down onto the form. The automatically discovered ones are configurable. So I can set patterns. So if it starts with SN, I think that the next piece of text is going to be the serial number. Or if it's GPM, I know that it's gallons per minute. So it's I can map specific types of text to attributes on that inspection form. That does require a little bit of upfront, so the automatic mapping, but it is configurable and pretty easy to do. We have, again, a bunch of them that are out of the box for the common ones like model number, serial number, those sort of things. But if you have custom things that you want to capture, then.
Well, one of the intents that we heard about in talking with one of our clients was, this is something that Brian was discussing with them, is that they had the need to find additional data from existing assets. And naturally, all their assets are currently tagged. Some of them had QR codes, as you showed the ability to work with those. Others may have been a pre-configured tag. So if you did have that ability to have a configuration around their tag format, then naturally the technician can walk up, scan the tag, and then of course, filling in the form with any missing data. And that's where, Brian was pointing out, part of the exercise was, tying it back to an asset management plan or a strategic report, that, the accuracy of data is vital, and not being able to have, 100% of your data need, well, that could be the reason you're sending the tech out to collect information. So working with a pre-existing tag format or being able to collect that data on the fly obviously is vital. And Brian, I wanted to bring this back to you. What are some of those key data elements that they may have to go back out to the field to collect?
Well, I think Jim gave some good examples in terms of reporting. You'll have a requirement to report the last time you've done maintenance on an asset. So that could be a scheduled maintenance. It could be an inspection. It could just be you're out there and do a test on an asset. And all of the above can be used as the last time you've touched that federally funded asset. It's recorded by the technician, time and place and date, and can be used to streamline your reporting versus going into a maintenance management office and saying, give us your records, have the boss sign off that all of these assets are here and maintained and somebody's touched them in the last year or the last 2 years.
Great. And one other question that has come into the chat here is in regards to other tools that are available, and do they really integrate and work directly with Maximo? I think we covered this, but I just want to re-echo the question. I guess I'll ask Jason you this question. Esri Collector, Maximo Anywhere, Maximo Mobile, other tools that are provided by a series of partners, do they send the data to an interim database that is then integrated to Maximo? It sounds like with OPCO you're going direct to the Maximo database. So just a little bit more clarification on how these various tools communicate to Maximo.
Yeah, I mean, different tools have different solutions, obviously. The Esri one is very, as you'd expect, very focused on Esri. The data is captured as part of an Esri form and then pushed over to Maximo, assuming you have an integration of some sort. But yes, the data is effectively captured in Esri, and then you're looking at some integration into Maximo. Also, again, my opinion on this is it's sort of out of context of the process and the flow as far as how do you assign that work. It's outside of kind of that process. It's simply, here's a form, please go do it. But the management of that form doesn't really exist. I can't speak to Anywhere. I know that they had some basic form capability, but anything that they're doing that actually is beyond that would have been some sort of custom solution. And the only other one that I'm aware of is Data Splice, that puts it out to an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV, that it's then, as part of their process is an external spreadsheet that needs to be managed, passed around, and then eventually put back into Maximo. But yeah, that end-to-end process really doesn't exist in any of those other solutions. I mean, that's not to say that they can't capture the data, but it really just kind of isn't that integrated, holistic solution.
Okay, and one last question that popped in is the data collection tool that you showed today, being OPCO, is it compliant with all versions of Maximo, including Maximo 8 or MAZ?
Yeah, so we support from 7609, which is where the work centers get introduced, all the way up to MAZ. In fact, we've tested against MAZ, and we're running a series on how to install and deploy MAZ. So, yes, we've been very careful to make sure that it is absolutely compliant with that and it works in that environment as well.
Okay. Jim, I don't see any further questions popping in, so I'm going to pass it back to you as the host to go ahead and wrap us up.
All right. Thanks, Bob. I just want to thank everyone for their time and attention today. If you have any additional questions, contact any of the presenters today. They'll be happy to answer any questions. We will be continuing this series next month. And I believe tentatively, I think we believe we're going to do a MAZ 8 installation demonstration. So how does that get accomplished? It will be, a real technical deep dive. So when we talk Straight Talk, we're going to show you how to install the product. We ran a MAZ 8 overview a few weeks back. And we got a lot of great questions out of it. People are still a little confused as to, what does it mean for me? What kind of skill sets do I need to do what kind of skill sets do I need to do, to install it, to maintain it, to manage it? we'll be happy to answer any of that. And I think we answered some of those questions in the previous installment, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well,
Thanks,
I want to go
everyone.
ahead and thank all our presenters today, Jim, Jason, Brian, and thank the audience for your participation in today's event. This event will be recorded and shared through social media and our websites on both ZPro Solutions and Sharptree. One quick note, if you are looking for further information on Sharptree, it's sharptree.io. And of course, for ZPro Solutions, it's zprosolutions.com. Again, thank you for your attendance today, and be on the lookout for announcement on our next Straight Talk series topic and the date and time for that particular session. And looking forward to having you join us in that, for those future Straight Talk series. So thank you again for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.